rain had been falling for hours, turning the empty streets into shimmering rivers beneath the glow of dying streetlights. Daniel Brooks tightened the strap of his camera bag and glanced at his phone. The screen flashed 1% battery before fading to black forever. He sighed. Missing the last scheduled bus had already ruined his plans, and now he was stranded in a town he had never intended to visit. The locals had warned him that no one traveled Highway 66 after midnight, but Daniel dismissed their warnings as nothing more than old ghost stories invented to scare curious strangers. A cold wind swept across the deserted bus stop, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and pine trees. Thunder rolled across the sky as thick fog slowly swallowed the road ahead. Just as Daniel considered walking to the nearest motel, two dim headlights appeared through the mist. They moved unnaturally slowly, growing brighter with every passing second, until an old, rusted bus finally emerged from the darkness. Its faded green paint peeled away from the metal body, while cracked windows rattled with every movement. Above the windshield, the destination sign flickered weakly with two glowing words. Last stop. Daniel frowned. He had never heard of that route before. The bus stopped in front of him with a loud metallic groan. Its folding doors opened on their own, releasing a rush of freezing air that smelled of rust, damp wood, and something far older. The elderly driver sat motionless behind the wheel. His skin was pale, his eyes lifeless, and his hands rested on the cracked steering wheel like stone statues. He didn't greet Daniel or ask for a destination. After a moment of hesitation, Daniel climbed aboard. The interior looked abandoned despite the engine running smoothly. Torn leather seats stretched into the darkness. Weak yellow lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Only 6 passengers occupied the bus. An elderly woman stared silently through the rain-covered window. A little girl hugged an old teddy bear, missing one eye. A businessman in a gray suit sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the floor. A young couple held hands without speaking. And at the very back sat a tall man dressed in a long black coat, with his face completely hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. None of them looked at Daniel. None of them even blinked. Daniel reached into his pocket for cash, but before he could offer it, the driver quietly said, "Keep it." His voice sounded dry, as though he hadn't spoken in years. Daniel nodded uneasily and chose an empty seat near the middle of the bus. With another metallic hiss, the doors closed. The bus rolled forward into the endless fog. Minutes passed in complete silence. No radio played. No engine noise echoed louder than expected. Even the rain outside seemed strangely distant. Daniel pulled out his phone, hoping to check his location, but the screen remained black. His battery was completely dead. He looked out the window instead. The town had disappeared. There were no buildings, no traffic lights, no passing cars, only an endless road cutting through a forest of twisted trees. Something felt wrong, very wrong. He checked his watch, 17 a.m. A few moments later, he looked again, 12:17 a.m. The second hand had stopped moving. Suddenly, the elderly woman across the aisle spoke without turning her head. "Don't ask where we're going." Daniel looked at her. "I'm sorry." Her lips barely moved. Some questions wake things that should stay asleep. Before Daniel could respond, she slowly stood and walked toward the back of the bus. Daniel watched carefully. She passed every seat. She reached the final row. Then she disappeared. There was nowhere she could have gone. The emergency exit remained locked. The back of the bus was empty. His heartbeat quickened. He stood and walked toward the rear. Nothing. The mysterious man in the black coat had vanished too. Only empty seats remained. A sudden beep interrupted his thoughts. His camera. Daniel frowned. He hadn't touched it. The camera screen glowed by itself. A new photograph had appeared. It showed the inside of the bus. Daniel was sitting in his seat, but someone stood directly behind him. A tall figure dressed entirely in black, its face hidden by impossible shadows. Daniel slowly turned around. No one was there. His breathing became heavier. "This isn't funny," he whispered. No one answered. The little girl finally lifted her head, her large dark eyes locked onto his. "You looked," she said softly. Daniel frowned. "Looked at what?" She smiled. "The picture." Before he could ask another question, every light inside the bus flickered violently. Darkness swallowed the cabin for 3 terrifying seconds. When the lights returned, every passenger was staring directly at him. Not one of them blinked. Their eyes were completely black. The bus suddenly slowed. Outside, an old wooden sign emerged through the fog. The faded letters read, "Black Hollow." The driver finally spoke again. His hollow voice echoed through the silent bus. "Last chance to leave." Daniel looked through the window. There was no town, no buildings, only endless darkness beyond the sign. He stood uncertainly. Then something tapped gently against the glass beside his head. Tap, tap, tap. Daniel turned toward the window. A pale hand slowly slid across the outside of the glass. But there was no body attached to it. Only the hand. Its long fingers dragged downward, leaving dark streaks behind before disappearing into the fog. Daniel froze. Then, from somewhere behind him, a whisper drifted through the bus. "You should have missed this bus." The rain had been falling for hours, turning the empty streets into shimmering rivers beneath the glow of dying streetlights. Daniel Brooks tightened the strap of his camera bag and glanced at his phone. The screen flashed 1% battery before fading to black forever. He sighed. Missing the last scheduled bus had already ruined his plans, and now he was stranded in a town he had never intended to visit. The locals had warned him that no one traveled Highway 66 after midnight, but Daniel dismissed their warnings as nothing more than old ghost stories invented to scare curious strangers. A cold wind swept across the deserted bus stop, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and pine trees. Thunder rolled across the sky as thick fog slowly swallowed the road ahead. Just as Daniel considered walking to the nearest motel, 2 dim headlights appeared through the mist. They moved unnaturally slowly, growing brighter with every passing second, until an old, rusted bus finally emerged from the darkness. Its faded green paint peeled away from the metal body, while cracked windows rattled with every movement. Above the windshield, the destination sign flickered weakly with 2 glowing words. Last stop. Daniel frowned. He had never heard of that route before. The bus stopped in front of him with a loud metallic groan. Its folding doors opened on their own, releasing a rush of freezing air that smelled of rust, damp wood, and something far older. The elderly driver sat motionless behind the wheel. His skin was pale, his eyes lifeless, and his hands rested on the cracked steering wheel like stone statues. He didn't greet Daniel or ask for a destination. After a moment of hesitation, Daniel climbed aboard. The interior looked abandoned despite the engine running smoothly. Torn leather seats stretched into the darkness. Weak yellow lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Only 6 passengers occupied the bus. An elderly woman stared silently through the rain-covered window. A little girl hugged an old teddy bear, missing one eye. A businessman in a gray suit sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the floor. A young couple held hands without speaking. And at the very back sat a tall man dressed in a long black coat with his face completely hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. None of them looked at Daniel. None of them even blinked. Daniel reached into his pocket for cash, but before he could offer it, the driver quietly said, "Keep it." His voice sounded dry, as though he hadn't spoken in years. Daniel nodded uneasily and chose an empty seat near the middle of the bus. With another metallic hiss, the doors closed. The bus rolled forward into the endless fog. Minutes passed in complete silence. No radio played. No engine noise echoed louder than expected. Even the rain outside seemed strangely distant. Daniel pulled out his phone, hoping to check his location, but the screen remained black. His battery was completely dead. He looked out the window instead. The town had disappeared. There were no buildings, no traffic lights, no passing cars, only an endless road cutting through a forest of twisted trees. Something felt wrong, very wrong. He checked his watch. 7 a.m. A few moments later, he looked again. 12:17 a.m. The second hand had stopped moving. Suddenly, the elderly woman across the aisle spoke without turning her head. "Don't ask where we're going." Daniel looked at her. "I'm sorry?" Her lips barely moved. Some questions wake things that should stay asleep. Before Daniel could respond, she slowly stood and walked toward the back of the bus. Daniel watched carefully. She passed every seat. She reached the final row. Then, she disappeared. There was nowhere she could have gone. The emergency exit remained locked. The back of the bus was empty. His heartbeat quickened. He stood and walked toward the rear. Nothing. The mysterious man in the black coat had vanished too. Only empty seats remained. A sudden beep interrupted his thoughts. His camera. Daniel frowned. He hadn't touched it. The camera screen glowed by itself. A new photograph had appeared. It showed the inside of the bus. Daniel was sitting in his seat, but someone stood directly behind him, a tall figure dressed entirely in black, its face hidden by impossible shadows. Daniel slowly turned around. No one was there. His breathing became heavier. "This isn't funny," he whispered. No one answered. The little girl finally lifted her head. Her large dark eyes locked onto his. "You looked," she said softly. Daniel frowned. "Looked at what?" She smiled. "The picture." Before he could ask another question, every light inside the bus flickered violently. Darkness swallowed the cabin for 3 terrifying seconds. When the lights returned, every passenger was staring directly at him. Not one of them blinked. Their eyes were completely black. The bus suddenly slowed. Outside, an old wooden sign emerged through the fog. The faded letters read, "Black Hollow." The driver finally spoke again. His hollow voice echoed through the silent bus. "Last chance to leave." Daniel looked through the window. There was no town, no buildings, only endless darkness beyond the sign. He stood uncertainly. Then something tapped gently against the glass beside his head. Tap, tap, tap. Daniel turned toward the window. A pale hand slowly slid across the outside of the glass, but there was no body attached to it, only the hand. Its long fingers dragged downward, leaving dark streaks behind before disappearing into the fog. Daniel froze. Then from somewhere behind him, a whisper drifted through the bus. "You should have missed this bus." Daniel's heart pounded so hard he could hear it over the rumbling engine. The pale hand that had slid across the outside of the window was gone, leaving behind 5 long black streaks that slowly faded into the rain. No one on the bus reacted. The passengers remained frozen in place, their emotionless faces staring into nothingness, as if they had witnessed the impossible countless times before. Daniel forced himself to breathe. He had photographed haunted buildings, abandoned hospitals, and forgotten cemeteries, but nothing had prepared him for this. Every instinct screamed at him to run, yet the doors remained firmly shut as the old bus rolled deeper into the endless darkness. The driver never turned around. His lifeless eyes remained fixed on the road while his skeletal hands gripped the cracked steering wheel. The fog outside thickened until the headlights could barely illuminate a few feet ahead. There were no road signs, no buildings, and no sounds except the steady rhythm of rain striking the roof. Daniel glanced at his wristwatch again. The hands had not moved. It was still 12:17 a.m. Time itself seemed trapped inside the bus. Trying to stay calm, Daniel reached for his camera. The screen lit up without him touching the power button. A new photograph appeared automatically. His stomach tightened. The image showed the exact bus he was sitting in, but every passenger had turned toward the camera. Every face wore the same unnatural smile. Daniel searched the photograph carefully until his eyes froze on the last row. The mysterious man in the black coat had returned. This time his face was partially visible beneath the shadow of his hat. His skin looked pale as stone, and an impossibly wide smile stretched across his face. Yet Daniel clearly remembered that the seat had been empty only moments ago. Slowly turned around. The last row was still empty. Cold whisper drifted through the darkness. Pictures. "Remember what people forget." Daniel spun around again, but no one had spoken. The little girl continued hugging her worn teddy bear while staring out the window. The elderly businessman remained perfectly still. Even the driver seemed unaware of the whisper. Daniel's breathing became faster. He looked back at the camera. The smiling man had moved. He was no longer sitting in the back row. He now stood halfway down the aisle. Daniel nearly dropped the camera. No, his voice trembled. The little girl finally looked at him. You saw him again, Daniel swallowed. Art, who is he? She smiled sadly. The collector. Before Daniel could ask another question, every light inside the bus suddenly went out. Complete darkness swallowed everything. The engine continued running. The rain disappeared. Silence became absolute. Then footsteps echoed through the aisle. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Each step sounded closer than the last. Daniel held his breath. He couldn't see anything, yet he could feel someone walking toward him. The footsteps stopped beside his seat. A freezing breath brushed against his ear. You keep beautiful memories, a voice whispered. The lights flickered back on. Daniel gasped. The bus looked exactly the same, except every passenger was now staring directly at him. Their eyes had become completely black. Without warning, the bus slammed to a stop. Outside the windshield stood an old roadside motel surrounded by dead trees. Its broken neon sign flickered with only one glowing word: vacancy. Most of the building had collapsed, yet a single room on the second floor remained brightly lit. The driver finally spoke. You have 5 minutes. Daniel frowned. For what? The old man answered quietly. To remember. The doors slowly opened. Cold air filled the bus. Against his better judgment, Daniel stepped outside. The rain had stopped. The silence was almost unbearable. The motel looked abandoned for decades. Broken windows reflected the pale moonlight, while weeds pushed through cracked concrete. As Daniel approached the building, he noticed dozens of faded photographs hanging from the walls of the reception area. Each picture showed a different traveler. Every one of them looked terrified. Everyone stood beside the same smiling man in the black coat. Daniel's pulse quickened. At the end of the hallway hung a freshly developed photograph. His own face stared back at him. The picture had been taken only minutes earlier. Behind him stood the collector. This time, his hand rested gently on Daniel's shoulder. A cold voice echoed through the empty motel. You are almost ready. Daniel turned sharply. No. One stood there. The lights overhead began flickering one by one. Every photograph on the wall changed. The frightened travelers disappeared. Only Daniel remained. Hundreds of copies, hundreds of identical photographs. Every version showed the collector standing closer than before. The whisper returned. You boarded the wrong bus. The motel wall suddenly shook. A loud horn echoed. Outside the bus, Daniel sprinted toward the exit. As he stepped back onto the road, he noticed something horrifying. The passengers had never left. They were all sitting exactly where he had left them, staring through the windows without blinking. Only one seat remained empty, the seat beside Daniel. As he climbed aboard, the doors slammed shut behind him. The driver slowly shifted the bus into gear. Without looking away from the road, he said quietly, "The journey becomes longer after every stop." Daniel sat down. The empty seat beside him creaked. Its cushion slowly sank. Someone invisible had just taken a seat. A cold hand rested gently on Daniel's shoulder. This time, he didn't dare turn around. Far ahead, through the endless wall of fog, another lonely bus stop appeared. Beneath a flickering street lamp, a single frightened traveler stood, waiting, exactly as Daniel had only hours before. The collector's whisper filled the bus one final time. Every journey needs a new passenger. The old bus accelerated into the darkness, leaving only the echo of its engine behind as another soul unknowingly prepared to step aboard. Chapter 4. The New Driver. The antique camera rested silently on the empty seat beside Daniel, its brass body reflecting the faint yellow light that flickered overhead. No one dared to touch it. The passengers remained frozen like lifeless statues, their hollow black eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the cracked windows. Outside, the endless road stretched through a sea of black fog, where abandoned vehicles drifted like forgotten memories. Daniel could no longer tell whether minutes or years had passed since he stepped onto the mysterious bus. His watch still read 12:17 a.m. The driver tightened his grip on the steering wheel without taking his eyes off the road. For the first time since the journey had begun, he looked exhausted. Deep cracks spread across his pale skin like old porcelain, and faint streams of black smoke escaped from beneath his collar. His breathing became slow and uneven. Daniel finally broke the silence. "Who are you?" the old man answered after a long pause. "I was once like you." Daniel stared at him. "A traveler." The driver nodded almost imperceptibly. "I boarded this bus 53 years ago." Daniel's blood ran cold. "You've been driving it ever since?" "I stopped counting long ago." The little girl slowly looked toward Daniel. He couldn't leave. The driver's tired voice echoed through the empty bus. "None of us can." The bus suddenly shook violently. A loud crack echoed beneath the wheels. The road ahead began collapsing into a bottomless black abyss. The driver remained calm. "We're running out of road." "What happens if it ends?" Daniel asked. The old man closed his eyes. "The bus chooses another driver." Those words settled over Daniel like a nightmare. He looked toward the antique camera lying beside him. Its shutter clicked by itself. A new photograph slowly developed. The image showed Daniel sitting behind the steering wheel. Every passenger stared silently at him. Beneath the picture appeared 6 handwritten words. "Your journey begins tonight." "No," Daniel whispered. "This can't happen." The driver slowly removed his hands from the wheel. To Daniel's horror, the bus continued driving by itself. "There are rules," the driver said quietly. "The collector never drives." "Then who does?" "The one who survives." Lightning exploded across the sky. For a brief second, the fog disappeared. Daniel saw thousands of identical buses traveling across endless roads, suspended in complete darkness. Every bus carried frightened passengers. Every bus had a different driver. Some looked young, others looked centuries old. All wore the same empty expression. The fog swallowed the vision. The driver stood up. His body had become almost transparent. "I've reached my stop." Before Daniel could react, the old man walked toward the front doors. They opened without slowing the bus. Beyond them waited only endless darkness. The driver turned one final time. "I've forgotten my name." Then he stepped into the void. The doors quietly closed. The steering wheel began turning on its own. The bus accelerated. Every passenger slowly turned toward Daniel. Their voices merged into one chilling whisper. "Drive." Daniel backed away. "I can't." The antique camera floated into the air. Its lens pointed directly at him. Flash. White light filled the cabin. Daniel shut his eyes. When the brightness faded, he was standing beside the driver's seat. His hands rested on the cracked steering wheel. He tried pulling them away. They wouldn't move. The wheel felt alive beneath his fingers. Dark veins spread slowly across his wrists. The bus responded to his every thought. "No." Daniel struggled desperately. The little girl walked toward him. For the first time, tears filled her black eyes. "I'm sorry." "What is happening?" The bus remembers. She gently placed her teddy bear on the dashboard. "My brother was the driver before him." Daniel looked at her in disbelief. "You've been here all this time?" She nodded. "I don't remember home anymore." The bus horn suddenly echoed through the darkness. Far ahead, another lonely bus stop appeared beneath a flickering street lamp. A single young woman stood alone in the pouring rain, hugging her backpack while checking her dead phone. She looked frightened, lost, exactly as Daniel had been. The bus slowed automatically. The doors hissed open. Daniel gripped the steering wheel with all his strength. "Don't get on," he screamed through the windshield. The woman looked up. For one hopeful second, it seemed she had heard him. She stepped backward, then the fog behind her shifted. A tall, smiling figure in a black coat appeared from the mist. The collector. He gently pointed toward the open bus door. The woman hesitated only a moment before climbing aboard. She smiled politely at Daniel. "Does this bus go to Ashwood?" Daniel opened his mouth. No words came out. Something inside him refused to let him answer. The doors slammed shut. The journey continued. The new passenger walked slowly down the aisle and chose the very seat where Daniel had once sat. She glanced nervously around the silent bus. "I guess everyone's tired." No one replied. Daniel watched helplessly through the rearview mirror. He remembered saying almost those exact words only hours earlier. The endless cycle had begun again. The collector stood outside the fog, growing smaller as the bus disappeared into the darkness. His smile never faded. Somewhere in the distance, another abandoned bus stop appeared, then another, and another. Daniel finally understood the horrifying truth. The road had no end. The passengers would never arrive, and every lost soul who boarded after midnight became another memory trapped forever between the living and the dead. As the bus disappeared into the endless sea of black mist, the destination sign above the windshield flickered one final time. It no longer read, "Last stop." It now displayed a new destination, "No return." Chapter 5. The Forgotten Terminal. The destination sign above the windshield burned with a dull crimson glow, "No return." Daniel gripped the cracked steering wheel as though it had fused with his hands. Every attempt to pull away only sent a sharp pain racing through his arms. Black veins continued spreading beneath his skin, climbing slowly toward his shoulders. He could feel the bus responding to his thoughts, accelerating whenever fear overwhelmed him and slowing whenever he tried to resist. It was no longer just a vehicle. It was alive. The new passenger sat quietly near the middle of the bus, nervously looking around at the silent travelers. "My name is Emily," she said with an uneasy smile. Is everything okay?" No one answered. She laughed softly, trying to hide her fear. "This is probably the quietest bus I've ever been on." Daniel desperately tried to speak. "Get off." Only a faint whisper escaped his lips. Emily frowned. "What did you say?" Before Daniel could force out another word, the little girl slowly shook her head. "He can't warn you anymore." Emily looked confused. "What do you mean?" The little girl hugged her worn teddy bear tightly. Bus owns his voice now." Daniel felt panic rising inside him. He wasn't just becoming the driver. He was becoming part of the bus. The road suddenly curved downward into a valley covered by thick gray fog. In the distance, hundreds of pale lights flickered like dying stars. As they drew closer, Daniel realized they weren't stars at all. They were buses. Thousands of abandoned buses stood in perfect rows beneath an enormous black sky. Some were ancient wooden coaches, others looked modern. Everyone carried the same glowing destination sign. The driverless bus rolled through towering iron gates marked with faded letters. The Forgotten Terminal. The air outside shimmered with unnatural silence, broken. Station clocks covered every wall. Each displayed the exact same. Tomorrow 12:17, the bus stopped by. Its doors hissed open. No one moved. Then, one by one, every ghostly passenger stepped into the terminal. Daniel's feet moved against his will. The bus forced him to follow. Inside the station stood hundreds of buses parked beneath broken glass ceilings. Ghostly drivers wandered aimlessly between them, each wearing the same exhausted expression Daniel had seen on the old driver. Some appeared young, others looked impossibly old. One woman pushed an invisible steering wheel while walking. Another man whispered bus stop names that no longer existed. None seemed aware of the others. Emily stared in horror. "What is this place?" A familiar voice answered from the darkness. "The place where drivers are, forgotten." The collector emerged from between two abandoned buses. His black coat drifted through the air without wind. His impossible smile remained unchanged. "See, you've adjusted well." Daniel glared at him. "What do you want?" The collector gently touched one of the station clocks. Its hands immediately began spinning backward. "I don't collect souls." He smiled wider. "I collect moments." The clocks all started ticking at once. Thousands of loud clicks echoed through the terminal. Every bus engine suddenly roared to life. The ground trembled. The collector looked toward Emily. "She still remembers home." Daniel immediately understood the collector wanted her memories. Emily slowly stepped backward. "I don't know who you are." "You will." The collector raised the antique camera. Flash, the station exploded with white light. When Daniel opened his eyes, Emily stood perfectly still. She blinked slowly. "Where am I?" She looked around in confusion. I can't remember." The collector lowered the camera. "One memory. Gone." Emily touched her forehead. "My family." She frowned. "Their faces. I can't see them." Daniel lunged forward. "You monster!" Before he could reach the collector, invisible chains wrapped around his feet. The bus itself was holding him back. The collector walked closer. "You still misunderstand." He gently placed the antique camera into Daniel's hands. "This bus doesn't feed on fear. It feeds on forgotten lives." Daniel looked down at the old camera. Every photograph inside had begun fading. Faces disappeared one by one. Names vanished entire. Families were erased until only empty streets remained. The passengers weren't trapped because they had died. They were trapped because the world had forgotten they ever existed. The realization crushed him. The little girl quietly walked beside Daniel. "I had parents once." He looked at her. "What were their names?" Tears filled her black eyes. "I don't remember." A deep horn echoed through the station. Every abandoned bus switched on its headlights simultaneously. The collector smiled. "I'm to continue." The ghostly drivers slowly climbed back into their buses. Daniel felt the steering wheel pulling him toward his own vehicle. Emily followed without resistance. She had already forgotten why she wanted to escape. As the doors closed, Daniel looked through the cracked windshield. The forgotten terminal slowly disappeared beneath waves of black fog. The collector remained standing, alone in the center of the station. He lifted one hand in farewell. The antique camera clicked by itself. A fresh photograph slowly developed. It showed Daniel sitting behind the wheel. Emily stared silently out the window. The little girl smiled sadly. Behind the bus, thousands of forgotten drivers watched in complete silence. On the back of the photograph, 6 chilling words appeared in faded black ink. "Only memory can break the road." For the first time since boarding the mysterious bus, Daniel realized there might still be a way to escape, but to find it, he would first have to remember what the collector wanted the world to forget. Chapter 6. The Final Memory. The words written beneath the photograph refused to leave Daniel's mind. "Only memory can break the road." As the mysterious bus disappeared from the forgotten terminal, the endless highway returned once again. Thick black fog swallowed everything beyond the headlights, while cold rain tapped softly against the cracked windshield. Daniel still gripped the steering wheel, but something had changed. The bus no longer fought against him with the same force. It was almost as if it had sensed the tiny spark of hope growing inside him. Emily sat quietly near the middle of the bus, staring out the rain-covered window. The fear had vanished from her face, replaced by complete emptiness. She no longer remembered why she had boarded the bus or where she had been going. Even her own name seemed unfamiliar. The little girl sat beside her, holding the old teddy bear tightly. "Do you remember your family?" the little girl asked. Emily frowned. I think I had one." "You did?" "I can't see their faces." The little girl lowered her eyes. "Neither can I." Daniel felt a deep ache inside his chest. The collector had not stolen their souls. He had stolen the memories that made them human. Without memories, they became travelers with no destination, endlessly riding between life and death. The bus suddenly slowed. Ahead stood something Daniel had never seen before. A beautiful old bridge stretched across a dark river, glowing beneath pale moonlight. Unlike every place they had visited before, this place felt strangely peaceful. The fog stopped at the edge of the bridge as though afraid to cross it. The driverless bus rolled to a gentle stop. The doors opened. No voice instructed them to leave. No unseen force pushed them forward. For the first time, Daniel felt he had a choice. He stepped off the bus. Emily and the little girl followed. Halfway across the bridge stood an old woman dressed in white, holding a small lantern. Her face looked kind, and unlike the passengers, her eyes were full of life. She smiled warmly. "You finally found the crossing." Daniel stared at her. "Who are you?" "I remember everyone." She looked toward the little girl. "Gwen." The little girl gasped. My name." Tears filled her eyes. "Gwen." The old woman nodded. "Your mother called you that every morning." The little girl collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Fragments of forgotten memories returned. Laughter, birthdays, bedtime stories, warm hugs, and sunlight pouring through a bedroom window. Daniel watched in amazement. Her black eyes slowly returned to their natural color. The darkness inside her began fading. Emily stepped forward. "Can you remember me too?" The old woman gently touched her forehead. Emily Carter. Instantly, tears streamed down Emily's face. "My father, my little brother. I remember them." The bridge glowed brighter. The fog surrounding them retreated. Daniel finally understood. Memory was stronger than fear. Memory was stronger than the collector. A loud camera shutter echoed across the river. The warmth vanished instantly. The collector stood at the far end of the bridge, his long black coat moving without wind. His impossible smile had finally disappeared. For the first time, he looked angry. "You should have remained forgotten." Daniel stepped in front of Emily and Gwen. "You can't have them." The collector slowly raised the antique camera. "You still don't understand." The sky turned black. The bridge trembled violently. The river below transformed into swirling shadows filled with countless ghostly faces. The collector spoke in a cold voice. "Every memory they recover must come from someone else." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" The old woman answered quietly. "Nothing can be created, only exchanged." Daniel suddenly understood the terrible truth. To free the passengers, someone had to surrender every memory they possessed. The road demanded balance. The old woman looked into Daniel's eyes. "You are the driver now. You can end this." Emily grabbed his arm. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Daniel looked at the antique camera in his hands. Every photograph inside had become blank. Waiting. He thought about his childhood, his parents, his first camera, every adventure, every friend, every dream that had shaped his life. If he let them go, he would become nothing, but everyone else would finally be free. Daniel smiled sadly. Some journeys are worth finishing. He pointed the antique camera toward himself. The collector rushed forward for the first time. "No!" Flash, a brilliant white light consumed the bridge. The world disappeared. When the light faded, the fog was gone. The endless road had vanished. The haunted bus had disappeared forever. Emily opened her eyes beside an ordinary highway at sunrise. Police officers and emergency workers surrounded dozens of confused travelers who had mysteriously appeared overnight. Gwen stood nearby holding her teddy bear, smiling for the first time in decades. Everyone remembered who they were, everyone, except one person. A young man wearing a dark jacket wandered silently along the empty roadside. His face showed no emotion. He carried an old camera but didn't know why. A police officer approached him. "Sir, what's your name?" The young man looked down at the camera. After a long silence, he quietly replied, "I don't remember." Far away, beyond the rising sun, an old abandoned bus stop stood empty. The destination sign had vanished. The road was finally free. Or so the world believed. Deep inside, an old forgotten photograph hidden in the collector's abandoned gallery. A single shadow smiled. Some stories never truly end.